of the year. We're going into the fall has started, we're going into winter, and once the weather gets cold, it becomes unstable and unsafe for migrants to cross to Europe. So this is the last gate, if we can describe it in that way, through which they can take a last chance to go and enter Europe. And that's why the rate of the travels of illegal migrants to Europe is increasing just before it becomes impossible for them, and they'll have to remain or take huge risk during the winter season. And the usual curve, if we may describe it, is that by the warmth of the weather, the influx increases, and when it turns to winter and cold weather, they stay inside Libya. But also because the government of national accord doesn't have a huge strength and devices and security facilities, military equipment to guard the entire border, the water border in the Mediterranean for Libya. So it basically responds to alerts, to reports from people, from other ships if they've witnessed the ship or if they don't find specific ships that they were expecting. So it reacts to these reports more than having actual control and the power to monitor the water border in Libya.
Well, Adel, last week, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, Rwanda and the African Union signed a deal for the repatriation of migrants who have been trapped in Libya. What is the progress on that so far?
Well, it's just so far an MOU. It has been signed about 6 days ago, and nothing significant has been taken into place. No executive steps have been into effect. According to the MOU, they're going to start the repatriation program from Libya to Rwanda within weeks. And that's just a quote from the statement by the United Nations and Rwanda as well. So there is no specific time, there is no guidelines or even an executive structure through which migrants or any other people who want to transfer from Libya to Rwanda can go through yet. So it's still quite vague. It is getting in shape. It will only, what we know so far, that it will only be by request. So no one will be forced to go to Rwanda. But in general, the UN is quite concerned. UNHCR has called on the international community to help aid the process of repatriation and fund the movement of migrants from Libya to other countries based on their requests. But its efforts have been quite tight. Since 2017, only 4,400 migrants have been successfully relocated by UNHCR arms, which is quite a very low number in comparison to the tens of thousands in Tripoli alone and the hundreds of thousands expected in Libya. So the task is huge, and it seems to be much bigger than the United Nations actually to take responsibility on its own. And that's why it's calling out for the international community to intervene quickly and help it out.
Adel Mahroui joining us there from Cairo with that update. Thank you. Government officials from Rwanda and Uganda have said they are committed to implementing the Memorandum of Understanding signed in August to cease hostilities between the two sides. During the opening ceremony of the first meeting of the ad hoc commissions of the Memorandum of Understanding, Rwandan Minister of State in charge of East African Affairs and the Ugandan Foreign Minister said the countries were committed to the realization of the provisions of the MOU, and they look forward to resolving the outstanding issues. Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni and his Rwandan counterpart Paul Kagame signed the MOU during a quadripartite summit in Luanda, which was also attended by the host, Angolan President João Lourenço, and Democratic Republic of Congo's leader, Felix Tshisekedi. 4 Zambian trucks have been hijacked in South Africa by unknown people in a statement released by the Zambian embassy in South Africa. The trucks were coming from Zambia to South Africa carrying different vehicle engines that were meant for reconditioning. 3 trucks were hijacked in Vadville in the Jamestown area, while the 4th truck was hijacked in Jo Slovo in the Gauteng province. The incidents took place in the early hours of Sunday. The drivers, who are Zambian nationals, were tied with cable wires and bundled in a car before being dumped at the roadside near the area where the attack happened. No injuries were reported. Meanwhile, the South African government has dispatched 3 special presidential envoys to allay fears in the aftermath of violence that saw at least 2 foreign nationals and 10 South Africans killed, many more attacked and their property looted or destroyed. According to South Africa's International Relations and Cooperations Minister, Naledi Pandor, the team will visit the nations to explain what the government is doing in response to the recent violence. They will thereafter prepare and present a report to President Cyril Ramaphosa. The mission to various countries is set to last a week.
President Cyril Ramaphosa says South Africa's standing and image has been dented by the xenophobic attacks. The president wants everyone who's been affected by the attacks to know that South Africa is doing everything it can to restore law and order and basically stop the attacks. He has thus sent special envoys to a number of countries on the continent to convey a message of regret and try to repair the damage. The teams will also announce steps to be taken by South Africa to bring an end to the attacks.
The President and ourselves have prepared a briefing note which will be utilized by the envoys. We've had full briefings with them. They've been briefed by the security cluster, so they have a full understanding of the issues which government has been very open about on the media, and those will form the content of what they will convey. We also will be giving assurance that we are giving attention to this matter. You would note that the President has called for a joint sitting where part of the debates will be on this very subject. So I think South Africa has stood up and said we take this matter seriously, and as a government we will act with resolve to address these challenges.
The special envoys have already departed and are being headed by former Minister Jeff Radebe. Radebe has specifically been deployed to Nigeria and other countries in West Africa. It's not clear where other officials have been sent to. Other countries the envoys will be visiting include Senegal, Tanzania, Ghana, and the Republic of Congo.
We've been fairly careful in really selecting which countries or which regions, which RECs chairs would be approached by the envoys. We indicated to the envoys, should it be their view as they proceed from country to country that there's more that we need to do, they will communicate with myself, and I would then make a determination as to whether further steps should be taken.
The special envoys have also been tasked to reassure fellow Africans that South Africa remains committed to the ideals of Pan-Africanism and upholding the law. Yulisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Let's now head to Ethiopia, where Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is now calling for patience in the southern regions after a section of leaders from the Kaficho community began a push for the formation of a new state. Here's Daniel Arap Moy with more on that.
Ethiopia has been grappling with rising ethnic tension for months now, as communities call for formation of new state to cater for their interest. The latest is the Kaficho community in the southern region, coming months after a violent uprising by the Sidama tribe, which is also in the south. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was here, calling for calm and patience.
You think that statehood will solve your problems? That is a shortcut. There are many interrelated and systematic issues that need to be considered.
Kaficho people are part of an ethnically diverse region, with over 14 million locals drawn from different communities. Being less than 2% of Ethiopia's total population, members of the Kaficho tribe feel marginalized, hence the latest push for their own province.
We have historical problems. That's why a lot of people are gathered here today, both women and men. It is not about being sensationalistic or tribalistic.
We are still waiting, and also we will believe that the answer will be answered. The question will be answered. That's our belief. After a few months or after a few years, the question will be answered by our Prime Minister.
Ethiopia has been witnessing tremendous reforms since Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed assumed office in April 2018. However, political violence, a coup attempt, together with instability in the south, continue being a concern to Abiy Ahmed's government. Daniel Arap Moy, CGTN.
In Zimbabwe, the body of former leader Robert Mugabe has arrived for the wake in his home village of Kutama. This is to allow villagers to pay tribute and bid him farewell. The body will spend Monday night in the village and is expected to be driven back to Harare on Tuesday. The family has agreed to his final burial at a national monument in Harare in about 30 days. A new mausoleum is being built for him. Mugabe died on September the 6th at the age of 95 in Singapore. A state funeral was held for him on Saturday in the capital, Harare. And it is from Kutama village where CGTN's Farai Mwakutuya is now joining us with the latest on that. Farai, tell us about the process currently underway in the late former president's village right now.
Well, I can tell you that there was a Roman Catholic Mass that ended a short while ago here. The late former president was a devout Catholic, and we just saw some fathers conducting a Mass that ended a short while ago. Now we've got some choirs that are performing. There'll be musical performances throughout this night as this all-night vigil is held here. Tomorrow, we understand there'll be another Mass and another event where people will give testimonies and speeches and speak about the former president, this time family members as well as some of the people that lived around him in this village in Zimba. So that's what's currently happening. Now, Mass ended a short while ago, and now we're going to have music all night long during this vigil.
Farai, there was a bit of a standoff for a while there over the burial place between the family and the government. Explain to us the traditions of Mugabe's village as regards the burial of such a person.
Well, indeed, there had been a bit of, there was no clarity initially, but we understand that consultations happening behind the scenes, and this agreement that will be buried at the National Heroes Shrine. The clan leaders or the elders of the Gushungo tribe from which the former president hails had wanted his remains to be interred here. We understand that he had a chieftainship, and so traditionally when a chief passes away, the location, the timing of their burial is often a very closely guarded secret. It is not divulged, and people often only find out much later that the person has already been interred. And so that is the process that the chiefs here and the elders had wanted to observe. But I think given the stature, the profile, and the fact that this was a former president, a national hero, an icon of Zimbabwe, they have now given in and accepted that he should be buried at the National Heroes Acre, but at this purpose-built mausoleum that we understand is being erected at that National Heroes Acre.
Well, Farai, just very briefly though, the remains of the late former president are to be taken back to Harare to wait for nearly a month before burial. What will be happening during that time, and where will the body be at that point?
Well, his body will be taken back to Harare, and it will be in a mortuary. In terms of events and activities, I just spoke to his nephew, who's been the family spokesperson throughout this period, and he says that the last official event will take place tomorrow. That Mass that happens tomorrow will be the last event around the funeral. Between then and the time that the burial is due to happen, whenever the construction is done, nothing really will be happening. The events will then kick in, I suppose, closer to that date, the day before, the night before. But in terms of anything happening, nothing between now and the time that he will be buried, but his body will be kept in a mortuary in Harare.
Farai Mwakutuya joining us there from Kutama village in Zimbabwe, the rural home of the late former president Robert Mugabe. You're watching Africa Live, still ahead on the program. Former Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe's remains have arrived in his home village of Kutama. And checking the progress of Africa's battle to kick out malaria.
Nigeria is my home. 160 million vibrant, ambitious individuals constantly seeking the perfect self-expression. It is these people who inspired me to be that person that is seen, to be a voice that is heard, and ultimately to be the anchor that I am. I have to tap in, tune in, and turn on the very best qualities within me to deliver the news. I'm Richard Nta, an anchor for CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The United States is considering increasing its intelligence sharing with Saudi Arabia after Saturday's attack on Saudi oil facilities. Washington has blamed Iran for the attack, saying it is locked and loaded to retaliate. Iran, however, rejects the allegation as baseless. The attack has caused the worst disruption to global oil supplies on record. Meanwhile, a Saudi military spokesperson says a preliminary probe has found that the weapons used in the attack were Iranian, and more investigations are underway to determine the launch locations. Meanwhile, China and Russia are urging the United States to exercise restraint after weekend drone attacks on Saudi Arabia oil facilities, given the absence of a conclusive investigation. Yemen's Houthis say they carried out the attacks. The U.S. has blamed Iran, but it has given no evidence to back its claims.
Given the absence of a conclusive investigation and result, I think it is irresponsible to determine who should assume responsibility for it. China's position is that we oppose any expansion and intensification of conflicts. We call on the parties concerned to avoid actions that could escalate regional tensions.
We call upon all the countries in the region and outside the region not to make any hasty steps or conclusions which could only make the situation worse, and to stick to an approach that would help soften the tensions which exist in the region now.
At least 30 people are feared to have died in the Democratic Republic of Congo after a boat they were traveling in capsized on the River Congo on Saturday night. Police say they have so far rescued 76 people. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
The boat accident happened in Maluku municipality in the west of the DRC. More than 100 passengers were traveling from the northern province of Mai-Ndombe to the capital, Kinshasa. Congolese police say they rescued 76 people on Sunday, but 36 others were missing. 6 passengers were rescued on Monday. Some of the survivors say the accident was caused by bad weather.
There was a very strong wind that night. It created lots of turbulence and made the boat capsize. There were 130 passengers, but only 70 of us survived.
Other survivors lost their children in the tragic accident.
We were very many on that boat. I lost my 2-year-old child after it capsized.
Boat accidents are common in the DRC. In April this year, 150 people went missing after a boat capsized on Lake Kivu in eastern DRC. Traveling by boat is the most common mode of transport for the vast majority of Congolese due to the country's poor road network. But the boats are not well maintained and are often overloaded, which has led to the deaths of many people. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Preliminary results from Tunisia's presidential election are expected tomorrow, but exit polls had indicated by Monday afternoon that independent candidates Kais Said and Nabil Karau were in the lead. According to the Independent Electoral Commission, only 45% of the more than 7 million registered voters took part. Vote counting is currently underway, but early indications are that a runoff election is likely if final results confirm that none of the candidates got more than 50% of the vote. Well, CGTN's Adnan Chauchi is following the developments in Tunis. He's joining me live from there. Adnan, we expect preliminary results tomorrow, but what do the numbers look like at this time?
At this time, the most recent results from the Higher Independent Authority for Elections and from the regional offices of the Election Authority have confirmed the exit poll of Sunday. Kais Said is leading, the university professor is leading in the center of the country with around 18% of the votes. followed by the media tycoon Nabil Al-Qarwi in the northwest of Tunisia, in the regions of Jandouba, Al-Kef, and Beja, as well as in the north, the region of Bizerta. They are followed by a third candidate, the Nahda movement candidate, the current Parliament Speaker Abdel Fattah Mourou, in the capital city Tunis and in the city of Sfax as well, and in the south in the region of Tatawin. So the exit polls have been confirmed by the official numbers, and the manual counting has reached around 75%. The results could be announced later tonight by the High Independent Authority for Elections. Now we are waiting for the end of the manual counting and the comparison that will be made between the manual counting and the electronic counting.
And then take us through the process that will follow next, since none of the candidates, it seems, is expected to secure more than 50% of the ballot.
It's impossible, as you have said. It's very difficult that one of the candidates secures 51%. But the two candidates with the highest number of voters, probably Qais Said, Nabil Al-Qarwi, and maybe Abdel Fattah Mourou, two of them will go to the second round of the elections. It should be held, as the election authority announced, in about 1 month, in mid-October. And we will have two candidates, just two candidates. But here there is a technical and also a legal problem, because one of the two candidates, Nabil Al-Qarwi, is in jail. He was arrested a few days before the beginning of the campaign, the presidential campaign, on suspicion of money laundering. And for the moment, legislators, lawyers, as well as judges do not have an answer. His campaign spokesperson called for the immediate release of Nabil Al-Qarwi, but the judges say that courts are totally independent in Tunisia, and even the Higher Independent Authority for Elections is waiting for the feedback from the judiciary system.
Adnan Chauchi joining us there from Tunis. Let's now focus on health matters, and Kenya is the third African country to launch a vaccine that is expected to reduce cases of malaria in the East African nation and the entire region. Kenya's health minister said the vaccine had undergone the necessary steps and approvals and found to be effective. It is hoped that the drug will reduce malaria prevalence from the current 13% to 8%. Efforts to completely eradicate the killer disease on the continent have been on for 50 years now. Although there have been successes, malaria continues to kill many. However, recent support from political and religious leaders is bearing fruit. Here's CGTN's Robert Nagila with more on that.
The study by the Lancet Commission on Malaria Eradication, funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, is confident that malaria can be eradicated by 2050. For this to happen, several factors must be taken into consideration. First, enhanced software of eradication. This can be achieved through management training among National Malaria Program staff, providing managers and staff access to more accurate and timely malaria data. Second, investing in new methods of rapid diagnosis, new long-lasting insecticides and new medications. And finally, through financial investment, by galvanizing new donors while also urging greater domestic financing. The report says global spending on malaria should be increased by $2 billion per year. We currently spend about $4 million annually. Domestic and international spending on malaria increased from about $1.5 billion in 2000 to $4.3 billion in 2016. In the same period, the number of countries with endemic malaria dropped from 106 to 86, while global annual incidence rates of malaria declined by 36% and annual death rates declined by 60%.
Let's now turn to Ramanyang for a look at the day's business news. Rama.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in business. Crude prices spiked to the highest levels in close to 30 years after the weekend attacks in Saudi Arabia. And the soccer star Didier Drogba is taking his inspiration from the soccer field to the world of business.
No one again began holding guns. Machine guns from police forces toward the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time? Not at all.
The Excellency, thank you very much for your time now. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's focus on global oil markets, a big story around the world today. Crude futures on both sides of the Atlantic, WTI and Brent crude, they've hit their highest levels since May. This comes in the wake of the weekend's attacks on Saudi Arabia's largest oil processing plant, knocking out at least 5.7 million barrels per day of processing capacity. That's essentially half of Saudi Arabia's oil output every day and 5% of the world's total global output. U.S. crude is up $4.89 a barrel to about 8.9%, $59.73 a barrel on the New York Mercantile Exchange a little earlier. Brent crude surged by over $6 a barrel, about 10% to $66.25. Earlier on, the international reference point for the price of oil, Brent crude, did go up by as much as $12 a barrel to trade just under $72 a barrel. Now, this is the biggest jump in one day since January 14th, 1991. And back then, we had the Gulf War. Now, the attack on Saudi Arabia's oil refineries has caused significant concern for heavily dependent Asian countries that rely on supplies from the kingdom, China among them. Now, some analysts argue that if another attack cripples even more refining capacity, that could be a factor that may tip the global economy into a recession.
East Asian economies are basically export-oriented, and they are all importing countries. The price of the spike in the price of oil will increase the cost of transportation, which will translate into the production chain, and it will increase the price of everything produced, from electronics to medical equipment to food, everything else, and it will hurt the East Asian economies and then lower their economic growth.
Onto the business of aviation now. Africa's most profitable airline, in fact the only profitable one among the major carriers, has reported a profit of $233 million for the 2017-2018 fiscal year. In that period, Ethiopian Airlines faced a steep rise in the cost of fuel, a slowdown in some major economies, and of course, the March crash of its new Boeing 737 MAX aircraft. However, a 14% rise in passenger volumes enabled it to remain profitable, as CGTN's Kirum Chala now reports.
Against all odds, Ethiopian Airlines continues to profit. This 17 and 14% growth for operating and passenger numbers respectively is keeping it still at the top of the business in Africa. It's even coping up well with the global phenomenon of grounding the MAX 8 planes.
Around 380 airplanes are grounded all over the world, and comparatively we have fewer number. With us only 4. We used to have 5, so we lost 1, so 4 of them have been grounded since then. We knew that from the complexity of the problem at that time, because we had all the data, that it will not be easy to return them on the air, so we have made our own preparations.
Though Ethiopian flag carrier is doing so well, the crash in March, which killed 157 people, and especially the grounding of these 4 Boeing 737 MAX 8 planes is negatively impacting the airliner.
We have 4 airplanes sitting, not flying, and therefore they are not generating any revenue. On the other hand, we are paying interest because we bought these airplanes. So it's a loan capital, so we have to service the loan. So interest is still going on. So it is a big problem for us and for the other carriers.
So what is next for these planes and even the process of returning these planes back on air or not?
We will know in the coming couple of months what will happen to the airplane, and we will review the modifications, and we will ascertain and ensure that the problems are fully addressed according to our expectations, and then we may decide to return them back to air and continue with the order, because we, as you may know, we have more than 30 airplanes on order.
Ethiopian Airlines is opening new routes almost every week. To China, for instance, it will not only increase repetitions of its flights, but also start flying to new and different Chinese cities soon. Also, the airline is currently implementing a 15-year strategic plan called Vision 2025. That has resulted in it becoming the leading aviation group in Africa. Group Jara CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
The 3rd edition of the CEO Talk Forum has been held in Cote d'Ivoire's biggest commercial city, Abidjan. The event aims to essentially give a voice to leaders who contribute to the development of economies across the continent. Several business leaders graced the forum in the past, including Charles Key, the CEO of New African Capital Partners, and Jean-Marie Acker, the president of the General Confederation of Enterprises of Cote d'Ivoire. This time, though, the occasion was graced by a renowned former footballer, Didier Drogba. CGTN's Daniel Arab-Moy has the details.
After 20 years in the world of professional football, Didier Drogba ventured into the business world. He is now the CEO of Goals for Africa Holdings, with which he intends to invest in Cote d'Ivoire and Africa. The transition and successful conversion into the business world has seen him share his experiences to encourage young entrepreneurs during the 3rd edition of the CEO Talk.
J'ai fait plusieurs tentatives par le passé qui ont été infructueuses.
I have made several unsuccessful attempts in the past. I have trusted friends. In short, I have learned a lot from my past failures, and all this has made me the man I am today. I was preparing for the end of my career, hence the various investments I made before I stopped playing football. In fact, I always told myself that I had to be good to lead my team to victory. I think it's the same thing in business. But we must never forget the people surrounding us, because we win together.
Il faut que je sois fort, il faut que je sois bon, il faut que je sois le meilleur pour que mon équipe gagne.
Most participants of the event are businessmen. For Drogba, venturing in entrepreneurship has been a journey filled with failed attempts and successive ends, which have motivated the attendees.
I was expecting to be able to understand how Didier Drogba converted, because I too, in addition to my current job, am an entrepreneur, but on the web. And really, I am satisfied, because he told us about his life and showed us how he went through stages, and that inspires me. I now know that in business, you can fall, you can fail, but you always have to believe in your dream and work to finally achieve it.
Didier Drogba truly is an icon in Cote d'Ivoire, and I believe a role model for all young people wherever they come from. He has values that are important to today's youth: work, excellence, perseverance, surpassing oneself, and finally, an exemplary professional reorientation.
In addition to his transition, Drogba reveals he intends to push further as he plans to seek training in a bid to be better equipped in the business world.
Il faut savoir que j'ai arrêté ma carrière il y a à peine un peu plus de 8 mois seulement.
You should know that I stopped my career just 8 months ago, so I'm just discovering the world of business and entrepreneurship. Actually, I'm an apprentice, and for me, participating in this CEO talk is part of my new school because I too have learned a lot today. I even plan to take courses from October, so I will continue to learn.
In Côte d'Ivoire, Drogba has established himself as an important factor in the social field. He has organized various initiatives aimed at improving the health care to offer the disadvantaged access to medical services. Daniel Arab Moy, CGTN.
Two more stories for you from outside the continent. More than 49,000 members of the United Auto Workers in the United States have started their strike following a breakdown in talks with management over at General Motors. Now, workers have shut down 33 manufacturing plants across 9 states, as well as 22 part distribution warehouses. At this point, it's not clear how long this strike will last, but the union says the firm has shown little interest in meeting their demands. GM, however, says it's made substantial offers, including offering higher wages and investments in factories. Aramak employed janitors and employees from both Ford and Fiat Chrysler also joined the strike. The first national walkout since 2007. That one, of course, had relatively little impact on the company.
We just want what's fair to us. A few years back, we gave up a lot to keep this house open and all the houses around General Motors. And now that they're making more money than they ever have, we feel like we should get some of that stuff back, like cost of living and things of that nature.
We all submitted resolutions back a couple months ago what we wanted to see in this contract, and they're trying to get that for us. I total confidence in them, and obviously they weren't going anywhere with it, so they figured we had to strike. So I'm 100% in support of that.
And finally, the maker of the drug OxyContin, Purdue Pharma, has filed for bankruptcy protection in the face of a blizzard of over 2,600 lawsuits, and there are more still coming in, which allege that the company helped to deliberately fuel the deadly U.S. opioid epidemic. Nearly 400,000 people died between 1999 and 2017 in the U.S. alone as a result of an opioid epidemic that the company is accused of having helped to fuel. Purdue's board met on Sunday evening and they approved a long-expected bankruptcy filing. The company is pursuing that route under the terms of a proposal it's made to settle the widespread litigation. Purdue Pharma and its controlling Sackler family have consistently denied all and any wrongdoing. I'll leave you there for the time being, but I'll be back at the top of the hour. We'll be back on the biggest story of the day, oil prices, especially in the wake of the weekend attack on the Saudi oil processing facility. What direction will oil markets be moving in and why? We'll have some answers for you live from the markets in New York at 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, though, back to Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. And we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. An Egyptian masseur gained fame with his unique use of fire during massage services.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's cross over to Egypt, where a masseur in the Nile Delta plays with fire to relieve his client's muscle pain. Here's CGTN's Brian Toussaint with more.
Body massages are widely known for their many physical benefits to the human body, such as muscle tension reduction, recovery of soft tissue injuries, and the general relaxation of the body. Through his unique massage technique known as the fiery towel, Abdel Said has gained a lot of popularity in Egypt's Nile Delta. The fiery towel massage is adapted from an ancient pharaonic technique. Abdel begins the technique with the standard massage, using special oils to stimulate blood circulation and alleviate some of the pain in affected areas. He then proceeds to using heat on his client and places several layers of towels and other isolating materials on the client's back. A towel is then soaked in alcohol, placed on top and set on fire, burning for about a minute before the flames are put out with a wet towel. Some of Abdel's ailing clients say that his massage technique has helped them in getting on the road to recovery.
My condition improved rapidly. Before, I could not stand up to pray. I couldn't even stretch my back whenever I got out of the car. Now, after the second session, I feel like my body is getting better and my movement is also getting better. I thank God for this technique.
Abdel says that the fiery towel massage technique cannot be used on people suffering from certain illnesses such as high blood pressure, kidney failure, or hemophilia.
There are some prohibitions that we will always warn about. We check the client's medical and health condition. If the client's condition allows us to apply the method, we do it. If we find out that their health condition does not allow us to use this method after studying their case, then we don't carry out the procedure.
Abdel says he trained under an expert in the fiery towel technique in Morocco, and his skill has earned him several massage certifications from institutions in Egypt. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
And coming up in your sports news.